In Egypt, I fear we are snatching failure from the jaws of success. After progressively escalating pressure on President Mubarak, after rejecting regime-backed violence against peaceful protesters, after denouncing the regime's assault on journalists, after carefully positioning the United States on the side of the protesters, the Obama administration now appears to be wavering on what America really backs, whether America really backs the demands of the Egyptian people or just wants a return to stability with the facade of change. The contradiction that is forming between the administration's rhetoric and its policy concerns the so-called national dialogue initiated by Egypt's new Vice President, General Omar Suleiman. General Suleiman is a strong, serious, and capable man, but it is still unclear whether his job is to lead Egypt's transition on behalf of the Egyptian people or to delay it, sidetrack it, flim-flam it into irrelevance on the part of President Mubarak. The major items on the Egyptian reform agenda are well known: an end to restrictions on free speech and free press, an end to restrictions on the formation and operation of political parties, an end to the constantly abused emergency law, and an end to structural impediments to free and fair elections. But what have the Egyptian people seen so far? A dialogue with the opposition that excludes major opposition leaders, but does include regime allies. A proposed committee to report on the reforms that the government has no obligation to adopt or even consider. A promise to lift the state of emergency when the government considers that it's appropriate. A pledge to liberalize media and communication without any definition of what constitutes liberalization. The Secretary of State, to her credit, insists that with regard to the Suleiman-led dialogue, the people themselves and the leaders of various groups within Egyptian society will ultimately determine whether it is or is not meeting their needs, she warns. We are going to wait and see, she says, how this develops, but we have been very clear about what we expect, unquote. I wish we were that clear. Respecting Egyptian sovereignty is one thing. Maintaining a level of ambiguity so thick that ordinary Egyptians cannot discern whether or not we are on their side is something else altogether. Our national security interests require much greater clarity. The people yearn to be free. How refreshing is it to see people who are not trampling our flag in the streets as they raise theirs? How inspiring is it to see people in that part of the world ready to die for their children's future instead of sending their children off to die? The people yearn to be free. We must plant ourselves firmly on their side. Until there's evidence that a real transition is underway, with the exception of aid for humanitarian needs or with the transition, we need to suspend our aid to Egypt. We simply cannot afford to be viewed in Egypt as the bankrollers of repression. The people yearn to be free. I cannot help but muse if Charlton Heston were to be appointed the special envoy unto Egypt. He would stand there speaking softly with the big stick in hand and say to President Mubarak, "Your people have let you go." Thank you, Madam Chair.